This morning, more Hollywood heavyweights are being accused of sexual harassment.
There are new developments in the scandal involving movie mogul Harvey Weinstein.
New allegations against Kevin Spacey,
Louis C.K.,
James Toback,
Jeffrey Tambor,
director Brett Ratner,
actor James Franco,
actor Dustin Hoffman.
This is also the story of an open secret.
Open secret, something hidden yet also well known. A common and casual phrase, but one also used to describe the seriousness of sexual harassment in Hollywood. It happens, everyone knows it, but we don't talk about it, like an excuse. Like what happened with Harvey Weinstein and so many others in the entertainment industry. Why is Hollywood so seemingly full of open secrets? For the answer, you first need to understand the industry's power dynamics and a concept called institutional betrayal. Jennifer Fried introduced the term in 2007.
So institutional betrayal is a broad concept. It includes whenever an institution that an individual depends upon or trusts mistreats that individual. It might be the workplace, it might be a school, it might be a church.
Or it might be Hollywood.
So, I need to back up. Let me explain this. This is pretty nasty stuff. But these people believe that by, for example, having sex with a child, they can get more life energy than with an adult. Because a child has many, many years of life. And so that's why you have all of these supposed perverts running around as pedophiles. I'm not saying all of them know about this. Some of them are just doing this because they're, demon possessed to their eyeballs. But people within black magic do this because they believe that by vampirizing children sexually, that they will live forever. And they actually suck the life force out of the child. Whether male or female, doesn't matter, boy or girl. And this is obviously horribly nasty stuff. But it's why many people that get involved in Masonry start finding themselves attracted to children. And there's another reason for this, which I'm going to get into in a minute. But this is something that is very, very abominable. But yet it's something that's really happening out there. And it's why I think there's a cascade of events that have caused the epidemic of child sexual abuse in this country. Aleister Crowley, I've already mentioned him. He liked to call himself the wickedest man in the world. And he deliberately changed his name from Edward Alexander Crowley to Aleister Crowley because Aleister Crowley added up to 666 in 3 different languages, Hebrew, Greek, and English. And he believed that he received a new revelation in 1904 called the Book of the Law, Liber al vel legis. And this Book of the Law is this short 3-chapter scripture that's very blasphemous. It's highly anti-Christian, and it exalts a god named Hadit, a goddess named Nuit, and the crowned and conquering child named Rehur, Kuit, or Horus. Now, see, he taught that there were 2 ages before this current one. There was the age of the goddess, Isis or Nuit. Then there was the age of the the slain and risen God, which was Jesus or Osiris. And now it's time, in 1904 supposedly, for the slain and risen God to step down and for a new God to ascend the throne in the east. And this new God is Horus, the crowned and conquering child. See, Horus is the child of Isis and Osiris. This is an image of Horus. He's the hawk-headed god. And I don't know how well you can see that, but he's basically portrayed there as having the head of a hawk and the body of a man. And he is to be the god of this new aeon, as Crowley said. Now, what's interesting is that Crowley believed he was the prophet. He was like John the Baptist to bring forth this new religion, which he called Crowleyanity. This guy had no problem with ego. And in fact, he's famous for making the statement that he believed the greatest spiritual experience any woman could ever have was to have sex with him, meaning Crowley. So this guy obviously had an ego the size of, Montana. But what happened is, because of the magic he did, and he did several very powerful magical workings, the Cairo working in 1904 and the Almantra working in 1918 in New York City, that basically unleashed an entirely new strain of spiritual virus, which has since infected the world. And what is this virus? Well, it's the virus, I call it, of the fascinating child. That's the term he used. And, don't want to go there yet. What I mean by that is, since Crowley did all of these workings, and then what he did is, he was one of the two people that put together the Book of Shadows of Wicca, which is white witchcraft. And so he inserted a lot of this stuff into white witchcraft. So when you started having Wiccans coming out of the woodwork a generation later in the 1950s, this was spreading. It was like a carrier wave that spread this virus, where people were finding children sexually interesting all of a sudden. Because let's face it, what sort of a crazed individual looks as a young child, like 1 or 2 years old, as a sex object?
He knew everybody. He toured up with the Rolling Stones, he toured with the Beatles, 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 the Beatles.
It has been well noted elsewhere that many bands from the 1960s were influenced by Aleister Crowley and Thelema, including the Beatles. Here, on the cover of Hell, we see the Beatles performing the signs of the grades of Aleister Crowley's religion, A star, A star. It was 20 years ago today. The opening line to the track Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band is said to be a reference to the anniversary of Crowley's death 20 years previously. Here's Crowley on the cover, positioned second in line to the Vedic yogi Sri Yukteswar Giri. The Mano Cornuto, or horned hand, is the hand sign symbolising the pagan horned god. Here are the Beatles on a photo shoot for the Yellow Submarine album. Notice that Paul is doing the OK sign and John is doing the Mano Cornuto. In this image, John decides to stick with his horned hand gesture, while Paul switches his OKs to an owl face.
We'll start straight off with a letter from Wimslow in Cheshire.
Jimmy Savile knew the Beatles well. In the early days, he booked the Beatles when he was a club promoter. He then went on to tour with the Fab Four at the height of their fame, where he acted as compere and master of ceremonies. In the 1960s, Jimmy Savile and the Beatles were the British pop industry. Both helped to usher in a new era of music, Savile as DJ and Top of the Pops presenter, and the Beatles, who spearheaded the British invasion of America. If it is quite obvious the Beatles were influenced by the occult and the magician Crowley, is it too outrageous to suggest that Savile could have also been?
God is the fabric of everybody's life, and God is the fabric of my life. No more religious or less religious than anybody else. So I would not say that I'm a religious man, but I do know who the boss is. Or, anyway, God is all over.
More than 50 years of allegations against Jimmy Savile has detailed 34 crimes of rape and 126 indecent acts. The youngest victim, a boy of just 8. The NSPCC, who produced the report together with the police, is calling Savile one of the most prolific sex offenders it has ever come across. He targeted his victims mostly in the 1960s and 70s, at the BBC, at schools, hospitals, even a hospice. But the sexual abuse also took place as recently as 4 years ago. The Crown Prosecution Service has admitted that Saville could have been brought to justice while he was still alive and apologised to his many victims. David Sillito reports.
Jimmy Saville, a predatory sex offender. His first recorded assault, 1955. The last, 2009. Today's police report is the clearest picture yet of Saville's crimes.
It's clear that their testimony, when taken together, presents a compelling case of a predatory sex offender across the whole of the UK. It could be said he groomed a nation. He was hiding in plain sight, and yet none of us were able to do anything about it.
If you think it's right to make love before you get married, put your hands in the air. I see. Well, a few hands creeping up there.
Indeed, in the 70s, Saville was the obvious choice to host a TV debate on teenagers and sex. On his days off, he was visiting places such as this, Duncroft, an approved school for girls. The numbers are bewildering. 450 people have come forward. 328 were children at the time. 214 crimes have been reported, 34 rapes. The youngest victim was 8. And on it goes. Hundreds must have known something.
You have to be quite brave, don't you, at that point, to say, I suspect something, I'm worried, and then tell somebody, because you worry about the consequences, you worry about what might happen next. And that's pretty much what happened for nearly 6 decades in the case of Jimmy Saville.
Of course, there were suspicions. Louis Theroux tackled the topic.
Isn't he a paedophile line, basically?
Yes. Oh, how do they know whether I am or not?
But when women from Duncroft went to the police in 2007, no prosecution was brought. Today, the Crown Prosecution Service apologised.
Hello, I'm John Morrow, and I'm here today on behalf of the Nebraska Leadership Conference. With me today is my guest, John DeCamp. John is an attorney here in Lincoln. He is also a lobbyist. He's a former state legislator. He's a Vietnam veteran. I understand he's also a big pig farmer.
Right.
And now he's an author. And we're here to interview John about his new book entitled The Franklin Coverup, subtitled Child Abuse, Satanism, and Murder in Nebraska. Wow. John, how did you get involved in this mess?
Quite accidentally. I had been a senator for about 16 years and had been at the 2 Republican National Conventions, 1984 and 1988, as a delegate pledged to Reagan in the first instance and Bush in the second, and come across a man named Larry King, who was the individual who opened those 2 national conventions, sang the national anthem, was told he was the fastest rising star, particularly fastest rising black star in the Republican Party, and attended some of his largest parties ever put on by him, and from my recollection, probably 2 of the largest, most expensive parties ever put on by anybody in this country. And so when the Franklin Credit Union failed, I had more than a passing interest in observing and following up and seeing what it was all about.
The credit union was closed, for the information of our viewers, on November 4th of 1988. The FBI and IRS came in and closed it down.
Right. And this was supposed to be a $2 million credit union that was just a minority credit union designed to help the black people in the Omaha area. In fact, as they quickly discovered, and we don't even know this is the truth or not the truth at this point, it could be far, far more, but they discovered 40 million missing. Well, when you only have 2 to start and you have records that show you stole 40, creates some baffling questions. And
yeah.
Of course,
who's keeping the books?
And that opened up the whole thing, and I was attorney for one of the senators who was, personal attorney for one of the senators who was chairman of the committee looking into that, Senator Lawrence Schmidt, and one thing led to another, and I became attorney for a number of other people involved in the matter. And
now, in January of 1990, there was published what has now become known as the famous or the infamous, depending on your viewpoint, DeCamp memo. And in that memo, there were certain prominent people in the Omaha community who were named as being very much involved not only in the Franklin failure, but involved in the allegations that arose out of that failure, specifically with respect to ritual and sexual child abuse. And there were some mighty repercussions that really set off some big tremors in the Omaha community. Can you give us some background information on that memo and the way it came about and how?
Well, believe it or not, the real cause of the memo were articles in the Lincoln Journal and Star that were not accurate about an incident, number one, and then number two, pressure from the World Herald reporter to me to say, hey, how do you know information? Where do you get information? What do you know about Franklin? How come you won't tell these things? And I said, hey, wait a minute, fellas. You're the investigative reporters. You're the ones that have the information. You're the ones that are covering up, and here are the reasons you're doing it. And here's what the public knows. And I just laid it out. And people said, well, gosh, aren't you afraid of being sued? You're naming some of the most potent and powerful folk in this entire state, the people that pull the chains and call the shots. And I said, yeah, I know they do. And that's why it's so serious. That's why it's so terrible. And I said, am I afraid of being sued? No, heck, I think it'd be good for them to sue me. Let's find out the truth.
Right.
And I said, point number one, truth is a defense. And anything I wrote in that memo, we're talking about the memo right now specifically, anything I wrote in that memo, I guarantee you, is the truth. At least the truth as I see it.
Right, there was no malicious intent in it.
Well, there certainly wasn't, but it's the truth. What more can I say?
Let's talk about the McMartin case. In April 1985, authorities went to the McMartin case and looked for tunnels under the school. The children had said that they were taken into tunnels under the school. There was a chamber down there. They were sexually molested. That involved ceremonies, adults with robes, candles, chanting. Adults had no clothes on under their robes. And they were taken up into a tunnel and a triplex, a bathroom trapdoor of the triplex next door. They were taken out in automobiles. We're talking about 2, 3, 4-year-old children, folks, and prostituted in the community. The authorities received this complaint in 1983. They began their investigation. The authorities finally, in 1985, went out and decided to look for the tunnels because they said the children were hallucinating. The children also said that they were taken by air up into a mountainous area where they were exposed to satanic ceremonies based on what they described and brought back in time for the parents to pick up the kids. So the authorities didn't find anything. We're getting off. Pull those next slides. Well, I'll tell you what. In the spring of 1993, I heard that the property of the McMartin School had been sold from the McMartin family to the defense attorney, actually given to him. He didn't make enough off the county. His bill was only $3 million. And from there, he said he was broke and he sold it to a contractor. The contractor was going to build an office building on the space. And I heard that the contractor had this property, and so I went out and contacted him. And I said, dear sir, I would like to have access to that property. He said, I'll give you 2 weeks. I signed a contract, assumed liability, and along with some of the parents, we hired an archaeologist from UCLA, Dr. Gary Stickle, knowing full well that I'm not qualified to say there's tunnels under there, even if I found them. And we began our dig. At the end of 2 weeks, I had to stall, because Dr. Stickle was not quite ready to admit there were tunnels. It took us 34 days. At noon the 34th day, with the bulldozers, with their motors running, ready to knock the building down, he was going to knock the building down and then build this office building. Dr. Stickle said, you know, I can say without any question right now, there have been tunnels under the school. They were filled in. Now, I'm going to show you the documentation on the tunnels. This is it. No, keep it there. Keep that there. This is the what we found. This is a preliminary report. I have a 186-page scientific report available to you out here if you're interested, by the way. We found a 9-foot wide subterranean entrance under the west wall of dog room. There were 4 classrooms. That was Ray Bucky's room. By the way, Virginia McMartin and Ray Bucky were tried. Virginia, the grandmother, was acquitted. Ray had a hung jury. And we found these tunnels in the middle of the second trial of Ray Bucky. They could have been used to convict him. We called the prosecutor. He sent his investigator out, Mr. Perez. Mr. Perez told me, I don't want you entering in my conversation with the archaeologist. I said, why? He says, you're too argumentative. And I said, well, okay, you go in and talk. I'll just keep my mouth shut. We went in, he talked, and he argued with the archaeologist. Here's an investigator not qualified to talk about tunnels. He said there aren't any tunnels there, and the archaeologist, of course, argued. But anyway, they didn't use that evidence, strong evidence, in the second trial. They ignored it, right in the middle of the second trial. I might mention this. The children identified professional football players, professional baseball players, household name actors, actresses, and the son of the leading politician, not a leading politician, the leading politician in Los Angeles as being perpetrators.
Former House Speaker Dennis Hastert is out of federal prison today after just 13 months.
Mr. Hastert.
Despite admitting to the sexual abuse of teenage boys. At least 3 of Hastert's victims say they were high school students in Yorkville, Illinois, when their wrestling coach, Hastert, abused them. It was a secret kept for decades as Coach Hastert became Congressman Hastert and then House Speaker Hastert, second in line to the U.S. presidency.
House will be in order.
In 2016, one of the students bravely came forward, facing down Hastert in court and telling his story under oath. That student was Scott Cross, now a father himself.
This topic, while difficult for me to discuss, is one that cannot be swept under the rug.
But despite Scott's testimony and Hastert's courtroom apology to those he hurt, the statute of limitations on this child sex crime had expired, preventing prosecutors from going after Hastert for the abuse. Instead, it was the cover-up that sent him to jail. Intense investigative work by the IRS, FBI, and U.S. Attorney's Office not only led to sentencing for financial crimes for Hastert, but also ensured that his past would be revealed.
We feel strongly that this was a success in the sense of letting the world know what happened.
He was caught because the powerful politician who became a lobbyist had privately agreed to give millions in hush money to a man known only as Individual A.
He ended up going the cash route and taking it out many, many times, even to the point where they were making exchanges in a parking lot.
According to the IRS investigators, Hastert regularly withdrew just under $10,000 in cash to give to his former student. The continued deliberate adherence to this financial cap was used to avoid bank reporting requirements, a crime that raised suspicion at the highest levels.
Obviously, right away, there's a concern for him. There's a concern for perhaps how our country could be compromised.
We decided we had to ask him. That was our last effort to find out why.
Hastert welcomed the agents into his home and promptly provided an explanation.
He said that he didn't trust banks, but then ultimately it was revealed that he was claiming to be being extorted by individuals.
Hastert's attorney then claimed a former student was blackmailing the politician with false accusations of abuse.
I never thought I'd have to ask someone like the former speaker, which was, have you ever sexually abused any of your students? And he said no.
But as agents would soon learn and would later assert in court, the man in question was Individual A, and he was being paid to hide the truth.
Mr. Hastert tried to frame the individual he sexually abused. And I think that shows just how intensely Mr. Hastert needed to keep secret what he had done.
For some in Yorkville, the allegations remain hard to believe.
I was stunned. It was very hard. Danny did a lot for the community, and he made some mistakes.
But with the courage of Scott Cross and other victims advocates, statute of limitation laws have changed in Illinois, ensuring that future victims will be able to seek justice whenever they choose to come forward.
No, I'm not even going to talk about Spielberg, who, by the way, Steven Spielberg is a pedophile. Yep. See how easy that was, Corey? I didn't need $10 million. I just said it. But what I want to get into is, I want to get into like the bigger picture of how this stuff is all connected. Because when you're talking about like really elite levels, the name of the game is blackmail. So they want something on you that they can hold over your head so they can basically own you and tell you what to do. And they film it. And then they own you. So that's what runs the whole system, basically. They want compromised people because they're easy to control. Oh, I'm not going to talk about Tom Hanks either, who is also a pedophile. Tom Hanks, folks, is a pedophile. I'm sorry if this is the kind of bursting your bubble, all this information is new, but it's time that this comes out into the open because we are going to change the way everything works, because at the top levels of wealth, of power, the very top levels, these people are just sick and psycho. Look into the Rothschild family. Do some research. You heard it's cannibals. Yeah, there is cannibalism. That's the higher you go, the more sick it gets. And this is the thing. This is what really hurts about the situation, because a lot of people are kind of born into this. They grow up in it. They are abused. And through the abuse, especially as a child, you can break someone's subconscious mind. If you're not aware of any of this stuff, look into MK Ultra. Jimmy Savile. Yes, I'm getting into that. That's on my notes here. That's in my notes. The royal family. Yeah. Jimmy Savile raped and murdered hundreds of kids over the course of 3 decades or longer. No one ever looked into it. And he hung out with the royal family. He was knighted. And the reason I want to talk about Jimmy Savile is because this guy, Mark Thompson, he runs the New York Times. Now, Mark Thompson was head of the BBC for years and years and years. They covered up allegations, they covered up abuse, they let him run rampant, and they just covered it up. So this guy, Mark Thompson, is at BBC, and then he goes over to the New York Times. Now think about it. If someone like that is running a giant media organization, what are they going to say? What are they going to tell you? Are they going to tell you the truth? No. No, they're not going to tell the truth. That's why when people say the news is fake, it's because it's run by these people who are into some very, 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 very sick stuff. Those people are compromised at the top levels. It's really bad, and it's when it hits you, it.
Hey, what's happening? It's Bill Smith. Now, recent reports have vetted or begun to vet rumors online about figures such as Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg. Now, we had a large conversation about a year ago when the Pizzagate stuff came out, but that's been, the mainstream media has said that that's been debunked, because of a shooting, and it's dangerous. I don't know if it was ever debunked, though. I know we just had the shooting. They say it's dangerous to talk about this. I don't know. YouTube has claimed that it's not right to talk about this, and you shouldn't be able to discuss newsworthy issues in the world that hundreds of thousands of people are interested in within just a few days. YouTube has been working with places like ABC News, CNN to help them push their content from the TV onto the internet. So what they'd like to do is make sure that you can't discuss pertinent facts about things that other people have said. Essentially, it's difficult to get an official police investigation without some mainstream media reporting or some public knowledge of the event. That's the purpose of the press. And recently, people have begun to say that if you're not paid to do this by someone that they've deemed an acceptable channel, such as the Washington Post or the New York Times or CNN, then you should not be able to tell people about things that you have found that are written and documented online that talk about all this stuff. So here's an example for you. This man's name is Crispin Glover. He played Marty McFly's dad on Back to the Future. And he penned an essay back in 2003, before the internet was big and before people had cell phones in their pockets. Now, in this essay, he suggests that Steven Spielberg is, quote, appreciated the sexuality of young boys.
Corey Feldman has no idea what it's like not to be famous. He was just 3 years old in this McDonald's commercial.
McDonald's gift certificates. I literally was famous before I knew my own name.
His roles defined the 80s. Goonies.
This was my dream, my wish.
Stand By Me.
You call my dad a loony again, and I'll kill you.
License to Drive.
The only difference between you and that greaseball is that he has a license and you don't.
Films that propelled him into the spotlight for his entire youth. But being famous so young, he says, caused serious damage to him and his friends.
Do you feel like you missed out on a normal childhood?
What childhood? I don't know what that means.
A lost childhood and a loss of innocence. He blames the adults, not just those looking to profit from charming children, but also some with far more sinister motives.
I can tell you that the number one problem in Hollywood was and is and always will be pedophilia. That's the biggest problem for children in this industry.
The casting couch even applies to children.
Oh yeah. Not in the same way. It's all done under the radar.
Nobody talks about pedophilia.
It's the big secret.
And it's widespread?
Oh yeah. I was surrounded by them when I was 14 years old. Surrounded. Literally. Didn't even know it. It wasn't until I was old enough to realize what they were and what they wanted and what they were about and the types of people that were surrounding me till I went, oh my God, they were everywhere like vultures.
Vultures who Feldman says abused him and his best friend, the late child actor Corey Haim, his co-star in The Lost Boys.
Well, what happens if my mom is dating the head vampire?
Feldman says the trauma of that pedophilia contributed to Haim's death.
There's one person to blame in the death of Corey Haim, and that person happens to be a Hollywood mogul. And that person needs to be exposed, but unfortunately I can't be the one to do it. But the person that knows who did it and knows who he is watching right now, I guarantee you. Yeah.
Intriguing.
Yeah. There was a circle of older men that surrounded themselves around this group of kids. And they all had either their own power or connections to great power in the entertainment industry.
Pizzagate. It became a major story weeks ago when an armed man decided to investigate a D.C. area pizza place for himself. This man right here, he carried a rifle into a pizza parlor and then fired it at the floor. Media is telling you the entire story is a hoax or fake news. But what does that even mean? I spent the last month investigating. So what exactly is Pizzagate? And are there any actual facts to support this story? I've got to warn you, what we're going to talk about tonight will be disturbing to some people, but this is a reality check you won't see anywhere else. Pizzagate actually comes from the WikiLeaks release of hacked emails from Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta. In all, WikiLeaks dumped around 50,000 email messages, and it was from those emails that the claims that John Podesta may be part of a child sex trafficking ring come from? Now, to be clear, not one single email in the Podesta emails discusses child sex trafficking or pedophilia. That is a fact. But there are dozens of what seem to be strangely worded emails dealing with pizza and handkerchiefs. Self-described online investigators say that those words in the emails about pizza and the talk of handkerchiefs is code language used by pedophiles. So how did a DC pizza parlor get pulled into the story? Well, again, read any mainstream report and they indicate that Comet Ping Pong Pizza was somehow linked to this fake story and has no relation to anyone involved. But the truth is that's not true either. What media is ignoring is that the Comet Ping Pong Pizza place is actually referenced in the Podesta emails at least a dozen or so times, and that the owner of that place, James Alfantis, is a friend of John Podesta. He was actually named, this is kind of strange, by GQ magazine as one of the top 50 most powerful people in Washington. Yes, we're talking about a pizza parlor owner. Now let's talk facts here. There is no solid evidence that Comet Ping Pong Pizza is being used to run a child sex trafficking ring. But there are some very strange connections between Comet Ping Pong Pizza and a second pizza place 2 doors over, Besta Pizza, and the accusations of pedophilia. Now this is where things start to get strange when you research this story. Now to begin, I need to show you a 2007 unclassified FBI document. That document, according to the FBI, contains commonly used symbols by pedophiles to express their preference in children. I want you to see these images here. These are the images. Notice this one on the end, the triangle. That image signifies something called boy love. The pizza place next door to Comet Ping Pong Pizza, Besta Pizza, well, this was their logo until only a few weeks ago. Clearly, you can see that the Besta logo actually contains the same image, I'm going to show you again, as that boy lover image. Interestingly, after Pizzagate investigators pointed this out, Besta Pizza changed their logo, and there it is now. They removed the triangle. Also, Comet Ping Pong, owned by Alfantis, is the place where a number of performance artists perform regularly. 2 of the groups that perform there, who you can see advertised, by the way, on this Comet Ping Pong poster, include a group called Heavy Breathing and another group called Sex Stains. Well, if you check out the YouTube videos by these bands, Heavy Breathing has songs that do joke about pedophilia, and the band Sex Stains has a video that includes, and you see it right there, that same boy lover symbol. It's nearly identical to the one that the FBI does say is a pedophile code symbol for boy love. As I said, there are some strange things there. As for the owner of the pizza place, James Alfantis, well, he was one time in a relationship with David Brock, who ran Media Matters for America. Well, since Pizzagate began to blow up online, he has made his Instagram profile, Jimmy Comet, private. But an archive search of Instagram reveals a number of strange photographs and words with strange and disturbing images associated with them. Look, to the point where we can't show you those pictures. We're not even going to describe them to you because some viewers would find it too disturbing to share on TV. Now let's talk about the Podesta brothers, because remember, it was John Podesta's email that was hacked. In those leaked Podesta emails, John Podesta talks about his close relationship with Dennis Hastert, the former Speaker of the House, who was recently sentenced to 15 months in prison for abusing boys years ago. He was referred to by the judge as a serial child molester. According to the Washington Post, visitors to Tony Podesta's home in Falls Church got an eyeful when they walked into a bedroom at the Podesta residence hung with multiple color pictures by Katie Grannon, a photographer known for documentary-style pictures of naked teenagers in their parents' suburban homes. And to be clear, that just begins to scratch the surface of how strange some of this stuff is. And bear in mind, we can't get into a lot of the real details of it because of the limits on broadcasting this on television. But it is some very strange stuff. Now keep in mind, again, there is no proof here that there is a child sex ring being operated out of a DC pizza parlor. Investigators have already proven there's nothing to the story, right? Well, actually, no. And that's what you need to know. For all that is here, there has not been one single public investigation of any of this. Not from local police, not from the FBI, no one. And that has to be the big question. Not for Podesta or for pizza parlor owners, but for law enforcement. Based on what may be or may not be here, the big question is, why hasn't any investigation taken place? That's Reality Check. Let's talk about it on Twitter.
And politicians in this control system, again, this is why pedophilia is rampant among the political classes. This is what the Satanist confession said as well, that Australian guy. Politicians are introduced by a carefully graded set of criteria and situations that enable them to accept that their victims, children, will be our little secret. Young children sexually molested and physically abused by politicians worldwide are quickly used as sacrifices. In Australia, the bodies are hardly ever discovered, for Australia is still a wilderness. In countries that are not a wilderness, they control the mortuaries and the crematoria where they get rid of children who they want rid of because of what's happened. And it is rampant. I keep using that word, but it is. People don't realize. What happens is people think or relate the number of children that go missing every year to the number of times we see a story on the news that a child is missing and everyone's trying to find them. That is the tiniest, tiniest tip of the iceberg. Hundreds of thousands of children go missing in America every year. I've rung the states, because they don't have federal figures, tell you how many cars went missing federally, but not children. They said, you've got to ring the states. I rung a load of states years ago now. I said, how many children go missing every year? How many children went missing last year? And I added the figures up. What? Never seen this on the news, hundreds of thousands. Some of them are found, some of them have explanations. Not all, nothing like. And what happens is that you have the cover-up. There are so many stories where the story of this Satanism and this child abuse starts to come to light, and immediately the lid goes on because the system controls the various aspects that can keep the lid on. This is just one example. There's endless numbers around the world. The Franklin cover-up. It was an investigation by this guy, John W. DeCamp, who was former state senator in Nebraska, and he started investigating this guy, Lawrence King, a major Republican who sang the American national anthem in 1984 and 1988, I think it was, at the Republican convention. And he was investigating him for financial fraud through an organization called the Franklin Savings and Loans. But then he discovered that he's running a pedophile ring and providing children for the biggest names in America. And he wrote this book, The Franklin Cover-Up, Child Abuse, Satanism, again, they go together all the time, and murder in Nebraska. And what happened? Some of it got into this Washington Times, a mainstream newspaper, the connection to the Reagan-Bush administration, but most of it was totally covered up. I've been writing in my books now since 1998 that Father George Bush is a notorious pedophile, child torturer, child killer, and serial killer of adults as well. Said it on American radio. Still waiting for a response. And this is one example. A lady who became a friend of mine, Kathy O'Brien, who was in the American government mind control project since she was a kid. And met her many times. She still corresponds with me now and again. And I've met a daughter that she was talking about. Lovely, lovely girl. Totally shattered by these people. And that's one example of millions and millions that are going on around the world. And this is what she said in a book, Transformation of America. Kelly's bleeding rectum was but one of many physical indicators of George Bush's pedophile perversions. I have overheard him speak blatantly of his sexual abuse of her on many occasions. He used this and threats to her life to pull my strings and control me. The psychological ramifications of being raped by a pedophile president are mind-shattering enough. But reportedly, Bush further reinforced the traumas to Kelly's mind with sophisticated NASA electronic and drug mind control devices. Bush also instilled the "who you're gonna call and I'll be watching you" binds on Kelly, further reinforcing her state of helplessness. The systematic tortures and trauma that I endured as a child now seem trite by comparison. They're not. I know what she went through. To the brutal physical and psychological devastation that George Bush inflicted on my daughter. And that's just one of these people involving one of the victims of this. It's incredible, the scale of it, and it's going on in this country. And what happens? The wall goes up. This is what DeCamp found. Suddenly ranks are pulled in, and the media won't touch it. The Social services won't touch it, the police won't touch it, politicians won't touch it. It's the blueprint, it's how it works. And the Discovery Channel program, produced by Yorkshire Television, was about to go to air, exposing that Franklin cover-up and the paedophile connections. Bingo, it was censored and pulled just before it was going to air. Never to see the light of day, although you can get it on the internet, because one copy survived. I was naming this guy, like I said earlier, Ted Heath, as a paedophile and child murderer from 1998. This guy's record of killing children is extraordinary. Prime Minister of this country. This fella, Thomas Hamilton, the man who went into Dunblane Primary School and killed 16 children and a teacher, he was a procurer of children for the Scottish political elite, which locks into the Westminster political elite, and the satanic rings that lock into both. That's why they took the records of this case and ordered them to be locked away for 100 years. And then, if you've been following my website recently, and many other websites too, here you have the classic blueprint again. Everywhere you go, same blueprint. This girl, Holly Gregg, Down syndrome girl, her mother, Anne, and Robert Greene, a fantastic guy who's been helping them and committed so much of himself to this. When she started, Holly started saying what had happened to her, being raped and abused by the Scottish elite, suddenly the wall went up again. And Robert was arrested. He's been treated appallingly by the police, the Grampian police in Scotland. Grampian area of Scotland, by the way, notorious for Satanism. And he's now basically been told what he can't say, and he can't name people and all the rest of it, and he's... the case is ongoing. The media won't touch it, though maybe that might be changing, we hope. The Scottish law network or establishment will not investigate it. The police won't investigate it properly. Anne's brother, Holly's uncle, was blatantly murdered when he had seen Holly's father abusing her, and therefore had the ability to tell the truth and tell the story. He ended up murdered, and a cover story of suicide. When you see the story, suicide, are you kidding, was put together by the Grampian police. And Robert Greene is a man who, if there were more of his like in this world, then this world would be a very much better place. And Robert's actually here today, so thank you, Robert, very much for all you're doing. This is how they create the wall. You have again the pyramid system. Social services is a pyramid, a hierarchical pyramid. The police is, lawyers are, judges are, politicians are, the media are, all of it. The medical side, the doctors, the coroner's offices, they're all part of these structures. And up here, they all eventually fuse into the same group, the same ring of people, controlling force. And what they do is they put in these pyramids people in the positions of power who are in the ring, or in the club. You do not have to control everybody in social services to stop investigations or to enforce investigations to take children away for no good reason. You just have to control the level of social services that makes those decisions. And of course, once you're in a position in these pyramids where you are hiring and firing, what you do is you hire people of like mind, and after a period of time, then a lot of these people are in these organizations at different levels. You don't have to control every policeman. There's so many genuine policemen in this world, but they don't get into the positions of power overwhelmingly. The geese guys do. And therefore, they dictate whether something's investigated or not, or whether someone is targeted to pin them with a charge that is completely unjustifiable. Same with the media. You control that. We're not covering that story. Politicians, oh no, I'm not talking about that. I'm not investigating that. Oh no. This is how it's done. This is David Berkowitz, the son of Sam, multiple killer in New York, who from prison after he was convicted said that he did it, yes, but he was part of a satanic ring that was with him. And he said this, quite rightly, Satanists are peculiar people. They aren't ignorant peasants or semi-literate natives. Rather, their ranks are filled with doctors, lawyers, businessmen, and basically highly responsible citizens. They are not a careless group who are apt to make mistakes, but they are secretive and bonded together, the cement, by a common need and desire to mete out havoc on society. It was Aleister Crowley who said, I want blasphemy, murder, rape, revolution, anything bad. And now we're having around the world, not least in this country, but America too and other countries, we're having the state stealing our children on the most extraordinary scale with the most extraordinary excuses. There was one lady who came to light, not many do compared with the ones that are going on, because of the secret family courts where this stuff goes on in secret and can't be reported. And they say, oh, it's to protect the children. No! It's to protect the pedophiles and the Satanists. That's what the secrecy is for. And this lady, her and her husband had spent £38,000 on fertility treatment so they could have children. She had twins, I think it was twins, and she made a joke when social services came round, when the baby came out of hospital, and she said, oh, birth has ruined my figure. They took her children away. And then when she furiously resisted, they said, the mother has anger problems, which are a danger to the child. It's unbelievable the number of children that have been taken away from their parents for no reason. This guy, Tim Yeo, a Conservative MP, just before the last election, said in Parliament, using parliamentary privilege, he accused his local council of kidnapping a 9-week-old baby from parents. But it's the tip of an iceberg, and a gathering iceberg. All over the world, like I say in the book, I've looked at America as well, it's happening there. And what did Aldous Huxley, the Fabian prophet in Brave New World, talk about? The fact that children were going to be taken away from parents, parents were going to become no longer, not even relevant, they're no longer even part of society, and the state was going to take control and bring up all children. And that is where they're moving towards. And this guy, Ed Balls, my God, whoever named him was psychic. He was children's minister up to the last recent election, overseeing, taking more and more power away from parents, giving it to schools and authorities. And this guy is a former chairman of the executive of the Fabian Society and still a leading light in it.